No one's trapped in a little box. It's just a phone call. Hey, thank you for joining the Escape With Me Book Club. Escape with me, Sam Reiner.
And me, Danielle.
Into our most recent read, come with us as we evade reality and go into detail about a new book. We'll be covering the book from beginning to end, so there will be spoilers. Today we're going to Regency England, published sometime in 1811. Sense and Sensibility is the first of what is considered Jane Austen's core works, and her first novel. Everything else was short stories. Celebrating over 200 years in print. How does the work hold up, especially when compared to the more popular Pride and Prejudice? So we kind of both picked this book?
Yeah, I'd never read this one before. Obviously, huge Pride and Prejudice fan, but I really hadn't done any of Jane Austen's. I'd done Emma, but hated it years ago. And this one knew about a little bit just because it is one of the popular ones of hers.
I feel like it's a second pairing, like Pride and Prejudice, and then, Sense and Sensibility.
Yeah, this is never the first choice, usually.
It's not the most popular, but I feel like they're almost tied together.
Yes. Well, and they do have similar themes and redirects and family drama and He's Not Good for You. They're very similar books, honestly.
I'm pretty sure she wrote Pride and Prejudice after this book.
You can feel that.
Yeah. So all I'd ever known about it was it's tied to Pride and Prejudice. There's a Twilight reference because one of the crushes is Edward. In Twilight, she's reading the book and then the love interest is Edward. She's like, oh my goodness, I can't read this. And then I read a book called Murder of Mr. Wickham. And I thought it was just going to be one of those Pride and Prejudice spin-offs. But no, it's one couple from each of her books get together in a house and then Mr. Wickham dies. And I very vaguely remember one of the couples saying, oh yeah, I take it Mr. Wickham is a lot like our Mr. what's his face? It's also a W last name. Willoughby.
I would say something fun to say.
So they briefly mention, oh yeah, Mr. Wickham's a cad like Willoughby was. So that is all I knew about this book going in. I didn't come to Jane Austen until adulthood. Just a little hangover of my not like other girls phase that lasted way too long. But you forced me to watch the movie because we wanted to watch Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. And you're like, you can't watch this without knowing what the heck to go on. So you made me watch the Keira Knightley movie and then that one. And then I got kind of interested, but it wasn't until the podcast where Lizzie got me to read the book. And then we watched the musical, the Keira Knightley movie, and then the BBC TV show for that episode. But this, I knew literally nothing about Sense and Sensibility going into it, which was kind of nice because I didn't realize that Jane Austen had so many plot twists. And granted, if I had just read Pride and Prejudice not knowing what the plot was, I think I would have had a lot more plot twist moments of going, oh my goodness, but I watched the movie. So I was like, I kind of know what's going to happen here. And pop culture, and there's so many dating games that are Pride and Prejudice themes and stuff, so it's hard to ignore it. But this one I managed, and so I think that was kind of cool.
Yeah, because I also had done that Murdering Mr. Wickham book, and then I did a series where it was, what is the name of that series?
You've done a lot of retellings.
I have, and the one Sense and Sensibility one, it's like sense, like smelling, like tasting and sensibility.
So we both did a series where it was like Premeditation and Prejudice or something, or Pride and Premeditation or something. And that one has a Sense and Sensibility book. And the second one that I think you've read,
I did the one with the flavors.
The Indian one, right?
Yeah, the Indian one.
It's a retelling, but it has Indian culture.
I did all of those, and then I was like, you know what, for no reason, after I've done all these, let me go look back at all the Jane Austen work.
Yeah, and so that's why I say it's a both, because you independently were like, I'm going to read all of Jane Austen's books, and I was like, I've been looking for someone to do Sense and Sensibility with. But age level, this is an adult only because it's default, because the only content warning I have here is death of a spouse mentioned. But other than that...
But it also didn't crazy affect them.
It affected their situation more than it affected them emotionally.
Yeah. It wasn't like, oh, well, now she's crying on page 3 again.
So even then, it's very, very PG. I was laughing with my friends about it because we were talking about our romance books, and she was talking about her more modern ones, so those have a lot of open door scenes with stuff. And I was like, I'm reading a book where you can't write letters to each other until you're engaged.
I was doing all the Jane Austen ones at the same time. I was listening to the audiobook from Fourth Wing, and what a weird pairing together.
As far extremes as we can go.
That's pretty much the ends of both of those genres.
But to judge a book by its cover, I don't know, it's Jane Austen. Woo!
I was to say, which cover are you looking at, though? I think there's a couple for this one.
Oh, there's 1,000. So my book had one woman, which I don't understand why they did that, but they had one woman, and I was like, yep, that's Regency England clothes. And then the Goodreads has the picture and then like the black bottom, and then you can barely read the title, which I always had a problem with. I don't remember what series it is, but they do that for all the books, and I'm like, I can't read your title. You have a massive black bar in the tiniest font. What are you doing? But that's the Goodreads one. And then I've seen a bunch of ones on Google and stuff, and some of them are really cute, and then some of them are like, okay. But none of them really told me anything about the book because, you know, it's Jane Austen.
Yeah, well, I did the audiobook, but I had the one that had the two women. It's clearly the sisters.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I feel like that represents it way more.
Yes.
The two women, because it was both of their stories. And I know technically Pride and Prejudice also should also include, I don't know, honestly, all four or five of the sisters need to be on the cover.
Yeah, because my thought is Margaret is just Mary, but older. She is so ignored for the other two sisters, just like in Pride and Prejudice, where Kitty and Mary are super ignored.
But in completely different ways, too.
Yeah, Kitty is just a copycat of the youngest sister, and then Mary's just awkward.
What was the one about Lydia Bennet being a witch? That book is hilarious for people who have zero Jane Austen, whatever. I've done so many retellings and different spin-off things, and, well, this one's like, what if Lydia was a witch? And Kitty's a cat. She's her little familiar, and it's the funniest. It's so on brand. I love it.
So this book takes you a little bit to get in, only because I was like, okay, my brain needs to remember how words work in her time period. But there, and I'm going to say there, and only pay attention to Elinor and Marianne, because they are the only important characters. Their great uncle, no, their half grandpa. It's a weird situation. The dad had a child, because John Dashwood is the half brother of Elinor and Marianne.
Yes, the grandpa that dies was dad to both, the uncle and then the dad. But the dad is also dead.
Yeah.
So it doesn't super matter.
Their dad died, and then they were living with the uncle, and then the uncle died because the uncle was like, hey, you can come live with me. And they were like, great. And so then the uncle died and gave his estate to John, who is their half brother and older than them, with the promise that he would take care of them.
Yeah.
And John's gonna make good on that, except his wife is the worst.
Yeah.
I've never been so happy for someone to be named Fanny in my life, but she's like, no, he totally didn't mean that. And just keeps talking him down.
So they end up, the three daughters and the mom have to live on $500 a year total with all of them, not each $500. Majority's not great, but that's not a lot. So back in the day, Pride and Prejudice, obviously.
Let's check it out. 1811 conversion rate. All right, 500 pounds in 1811. Oh, goodness. So that would be about 50,000 pounds today, which is an okay income.
Not for four women.
True. So you have a mother and then three children on that income. So they're not impoverished, but as he points out, they do have like a standard of privilege. But so are all of Jane Austen's characters, so meh.
None of them have jobs.
If you have a job, you're looked down upon because it's so much more manly to do nothing. But this is just a long way to say this random cousin is like, hey, you should come live with me, because they're basically living on goodwill here. And somehow John's, by the way, there are too many people named John. Stop, please stop. So John Dashwood, somehow his wife talks him down to, oh, you should give them some furniture and help them move. And then they're like, hey, we don't need help moving, and I guess we'll take a couple pieces of furniture. So he didn't even do that. Goodness. But this is bad because Elinor has a crush on this dude named Edward, who is the brother of Fanny.
Yes.
The relations are going to get me so confused.
This is the one meant to inherit, I believe.
Yes. And so they want him to be a great man in politics because apparently politicking isn't a real job. But he doesn't want to do that. He wants to be a clergyman. He wants to join the church. So he wants to do something, but he just wants to do not the great whatever they want to do. And especially his mother. I don't think they ever mentioned the father, so I feel like the father's dead. But the mother is very overbearing and it's like, you'll do what I say, the kind of stuff. And so he's in an awkward spot.
I mean, I don't know because they don't talk about it, but wouldn't that mean he would have had to have already inherited?
No, because it makes it sound like she has the purse strings, like she inherited, and it's supposed to go to him eventually. But there's never a father mentioned, and she's always the decision maker, so I just assume that he's dead.
Well, I mean, Fanny's the decision maker in her marriage.
True, but John gets mentioned. It's always, oh, I need to convince my mother and sister. And then Richard's younger than him and he's a scoundrel, but we'll get there.
He might be dead. I don't know. I just thought he would have had to have inherited. He doesn't have the money, the eldest son.
Inheritance laws are so weird.
I don't know. Maybe a grandpa's alive. He doesn't have the money yet.
He does not have the money. The mother is considering giving him some sort of inheritance of like $2,000 a year or something, but she hasn't given it to him yet. So Elinor is upset because they're moving, and so they move to this other place to live with John Middleton and his 20-year-old wife who has like 5 kids. Good heavens. John's great. He's an extrovert, like an extrovert, like all of the caricatures of an extrovert, and that's John. As is his mother, Mrs. Jennings. Or no, his wife's mother, Mrs. Jennings. That's how that works. So she likes to visit the Middletons a lot, visiting her daughter, and Mrs. Jennings and John's personalities just mesh so well. But Lady Middleton is one of those people that her only personality trait is her child. And so if you're talking about her kids, she loves you. You're great. You're wonderful. But if you're not talking about her kids, she does not care. And I'm just like, honey, this isn't okay. Okay, fine. Okay, that's fine. It's whatever. Your kids are kind of a brat, though. It's fine. Lady Middleton's kind of a mid-tier. There are some that are worse than Lady Middleton, but she's kind of, oh, yay, you're here. Great. But one of Mrs. Jennings' favorite things is pairing people up. I swear, every Jane Austen novel has somebody.
They really do.
And Emma, it's just Emma, the main character. But for this one, it's Mrs. Jennings. And per usual, there's a colonel. I'm convinced every third person was a colonel, considering the consistency of how many colonels there are in Jane Austen novels. But then 100 years later, how many colonels are in Agatha Christie books? I swear every single book has at least one colonel. I have no understanding of the British military and how high up that is. But everyone's a colonel. It's fine. So there's this dude named Brandon. He's 35. And Marianne has decided that means he is ancient. He is practically her father, even though I think she's like almost 17. So that would be a young dad, but he's just too old for her. She likes to make fun of him.
To be fair, did you look at the cast of this movie?
No.
They have Alan Rickman, who looks very old, play this man. And then Kate Winslet, like young Kate Winslet, is Marianne.
Dang.
So when you visually watch it, you're like, yeah, he is old as dirt. But, I mean, he looks good. He doesn't look decrepit, but she looks like a baby.
Well, the best description, I'd like to write down the descriptions. He's 35 and not unpleasant looking.
Yeah.
That's what he's got going for him here. He also barely talks. He's an introvert. He's very introverted. He's had some things happen in his past that have just made him really clam up and be very private. So not the most charismatic.
We love a brooding man. We love a Mr. Darcy, a Colonel, whatever this guy's name is.
Brandon.
Colonel Brandon. Yeah.
So the issue that comes up is we have his foil in John Willoughby, third John so far for keeping track. There are more. 3 of the main characters are named John. It's fine. I understand that's real life and that's how that happens. But goodness, there are other biblical names. I swear.
Do you know how many Charlottes there are in all of her books?
Oh, yeah. There's another Charlotte in this one.
No, they're in every single one. Elizabeth. At least this one bothered to be Elinor.
I just want to talk. How did she keep it straight? Anyway, maybe she didn't. She was just like, I like the name. Anyway.
One of them's her own name. She just puts herself in all these books, too.
She does. Oh my goodness, that's so funny. So John Willoughby shows up. Marianne does something a little bit foolish, and ends up twisting her ankle, and he shows up and carries her into the house, knight in shining armor and all that. He just becomes obsessed with Marianne, and their personalities just perfectly match, and they're cute and this, that, and the other thing. And I was just like, so 17 and 35 is pretty bad, but 17 and 25 isn't great either, alas. So whatever. They're super cute. John Middleton throws like 1,000 balls in all the dinners, and so they get to hang out and be really, really cute. And so while Elinor is sad because she has lost Edward, Marianne's super happy because she has John Willoughby, to the point it was so, okay, this is how conditioned these books get me because of how proper they are. They ride alone in a carriage, and I was shocked. They get into a carriage, and it was like, oh, they ride off fast, so we can't keep up with them. I was like, how is Elinor, or like her mom wasn't there, how is Elinor not in that carriage with her? How do they not have supervision here?
The scandals.
Scandalous! But, I mean, it worked out. He just took her to his aunt's house that he's set to inherit. And he was like, oh, look about the grounds. But I was like, we're about to have another Lydia situation on our hands. And we didn't somehow. But that's where I thought that was going. Then one day, he's like, I have to go to London. I will never see you again, bye, basically.
And she thought she was getting engaged.
Straight up.
She thought this was the question.
Heading there. And her family already thinks they're engaged, which miscommunication trope, even back in 1811, I swear. Her older sister's just like, Mom, you should ask if they're engaged. She's like, no, why would I ever do that? And I'm like, wow, I don't understand all the social customs. Elinor, why can't you just ask? Why does it have to be your mother? What is going on? Then again, I didn't understand why Mary couldn't write the guy she was interested in, the other Bennet sister, either. But social customs are social customs.
Well, and when you're in a public setting and you've not been introduced, somebody else has to introduce you. You cannot walk up to meet people.
Yeah, you have to have someone introduce you. You have to have an in. You can't just walk up to somebody and say hello. You have to be introduced to them.
That's why in Pride and Prejudice it's so awkward that Mr. Collins goes up to Mr. Darcy and it's like, oh, I know you because of your aunt. And it's like, okay, but the aunt's not here. You don't talk to this man. Such a social faux pas.
Yeah.
They don't really do that very much in here, except for Marianne when she does crazy things. Girl, what you doing? Quit pulling a Lydia Bennet and sit down.
Honestly, though, I see why Pride and Prejudice gets the romance games because she has so many options. Elizabeth, she has so many options in men versus this book where it's literally, oh no, Eleanor's hung up on Edward and Marianne's hung up on Willoughby and maybe Brandon will be involved somehow. Anyway.
It's very
narrow.
Yeah.
But we have some interesting plot twists. So these random sisters show up because we have to have more sisters. So they're the Steele sisters and one of them's named Lucy. They're somehow cousins to Mrs. Jennings that she met in town and she just decides to invite to her daughter's house. And the daughter's like, we don't know them. They don't have rank. They're poor people. We don't even know if they have cute clothes. What you doing, Mom? And then they show up and then they compliment her kids a bunch. And then she's like, okay, I like you. I was sus immediately. It's not because they did that, but it was the way Jane Austen wrote them, where it just felt sneaky and underhanded, over the top. Their kids do rambunctious things where it's like, maybe you should be like, hey, don't do the thing. And they're just over the top. Oh my goodness, they're so adorable. I love it so. Like, I would feel uncomfortable if someone came into my house and started doing that with my child. Just the levels that they were going to, I was just like, this makes me uncomfortable. So I was sus from them from the beginning. But what I didn't see coming is Lucy lets Elinor know that, hey, we have friends in common. In fact, I know Edward. He worked for my dad for a while. Anyway, we're engaged.
Which is such a bombshell.
For the past, 4 years. 4 years they've been engaged. And the reason, like you said, it's a bombshell, is the last 2, he's been going to his sister's house and flirting it up with Elinor.
I mean, it never felt like a skeezy way.
No, just that they were cute. That they got together and they were just cute. And Elinor was convinced, like, oh, this is the man for me. Because it's back in the day, so their cuteness is literally, we have conversations and they're nice. He's not out here flirting and being like, oh, you're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. I am so obsessed with you, whatever. They're just having cute conversations. conversations in a lot of them, and they both enjoyed the conversation. So she thought that was going to lead to marriage, obviously.
To be fair, they were cute.
They are cute. It's facts. And so that's why it's just so shocking. And and I know Jane Austen did it on purpose. Lucy is so sus through the whole book. But then she makes her just sweet enough where I'm like, okay, maybe you are just a little, I don't know, low class in that. I mean, obviously they're a lower class than them socioeconomic wise, but her manners are kind of bad. When she's not plying you with compliments, she just does things and says things that's a little bit shocking, a little bit. She just straight up is like, Elinor, we have barely known each other for 2 weeks. Anyway, here's my deepest secret that I have told to no one. I expect you to keep my confidence.
Well, I don't know you.
And Eleanor's like, yep, I will do this now.
Eleanor's the best, and she keeps it.
And she doesn't even tell her sister. So her sister's really upset about the Willoughby thing. And she just yells at her sister like, you can't understand. You have a man in Edward. You're so deep in love. You don't know what's going on. And Eleanor's like, I'm just going to take it. I'm not going to tell her that my heart's broken.
I do think that's why, I mean, Lizzie and Jane do still keep secrets in Pride and Prejudice, but they're way closer than these two sisters. And I don't know if she got any feedback from the first book until she got to the new one.
Or if they just wanted to do a different dynamic, maybe. But Elinor feels like a mom.
Yes. Oh, she's also, like, the actress looks so much older than Kate Winslet. And I know that they're sisters, but I kept confusing the actual mom and the one who plays Elinor.
Elinor is 19. Marianne is almost 17 in the beginning of the book. And Elinor acts more like a mom than their mom does. The mom kind of is best friends with Marianne and feeds her delusions and is like, yes, you should totally hang out with this man unsupervised. And yeah, he's in love with you. It's amazing. I love it. And Eleanor is like, maybe we should learn something about him. And the mom's like, why would we do that? They're in love. It's great. And so Eleanor has to be the one to be like, slow your roll. You're kind of being inappropriate with him. Even if you are engaged, you're being sus. More worried about her good name than the mom is. Even if it was modern day, my 17-year-old met a man 3 weeks ago, and granted, I know they could get married really fast because obviously Edward's been engaged for 4 years, but they could get married really fast. But my 17-year-old was like, I've met someone 3 weeks ago and we are going to get married. I'd be like, you have some hormones going on. We're just gonna slow it down a little bit, have a talk. But the mom just hypes her up. She's like, yes, we're about it. You're cute. I love him. He's basically my son. Have him come over every single day and just hang out with you all day. It's fine. Also, we're all gonna just ignore your little sister Margaret. She's 13. She's annoying. Ew. I thought she was gonna be maybe a Lydia, but even a Kitty, but she's just so ignored because at this point in the book, and first of all, she can't go to balls. She's too young. So clearly we'll just ignore her. But then they go to London and leave her behind. And then later on, the mom comes and meets them, and then they go back to the house, but she's staying with a friend. Margaret's not in this book.
Thankfully, I know you haven't seen the movie, but she is actually a character. And I was like, I didn't realize she was even in the book because they glossed over her so much. I'm like, did they make this girl up? And I had to go back and look at the book, and I was like, no, it's the little sister that actually was there. She just is not in the book.
And it doesn't help that it's Marianne and then Margaret. Their name is so close. I bet you could have read it and thought it was Marianne doing something, but it was Margaret.
That's very possible.
So we are crushed for both of our women. So that was volume 1 for us. It ends with Lucy revealing that she is engaged with Edward.
It's a scandal.
It's a scandal. Like, what? Volume 2 begins, and Elinor is convinced, no, Edward did love me. He wasn't just flirting with me. I think his emotions were true, and I wanted to root for her. I didn't know how they would end up, obviously, so I wanted to root for her, but at the same time, she just sounded delusional a little bit here, and she ends up being right, which great for her, but at the time, when I didn't know if they were actually going to get together, I was like, you just kind of sound delusional. Like, she has letters from him. He has a piece of her hair that was turned into a ring. Edward visited them and they saw it and they were like, oh my goodness, it's Eleanor's hair. And Elinor made this conscious decision to be like, I'm not going to be mad that he secretly took a piece of my hair and turned it into a ring. That's a choice, but it's a good thing she didn't because it's Lucy's hair, not hers. So he has a hair ring. They've been engaged for 4 years. She has these love letters that he's written to her. And so I'm just, It feels like a pride thing, honey. This is Sense and Sensibility, not Pride and Prejudice. We have to talk about senses, which they do.
She's got no sense.
Yeah, Marianne has no sense, and Elinor has too much sensibility. Sometimes. You're reaching to Lulu. And she can't even talk to anybody about it, because Lucy has made her keep confidence. And every time Elinor is anywhere near Lucy and they could have a private conversation, Lucy just like goes on and on about he wants to join the church and you could talk to your half brother and get him employment at Norland, which is their estate. Oh, then we could finally get married, and like trying to pull Elinor into the schemes, even though Lucy seems to know that Edward does have feelings for her, because apparently, I'm starting to feel like I have the teeth the way I'm talking about this, but apparently Edward talks about Elinor to Lucy, but Edward never talked about Lucy to Elinor.
Tell me who you really like.
I know, and so Lucy is up on game. That's all I'm saying. She's up on game, and she is just, I don't know, torturing Elinor a little bit to be like, oh yeah, you know, love, yeah, I'm so in love with him. Oh, in fact, can you help us get married and further our happiness and da 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 da. And then she'll do little things like, oh, maybe I should break off the engagement, and basically makes Elinor be like, no.
Eleanor's too nice.
Eleanor's way too nice. If Jane was more of a main character in Pride and Prejudice.
I do kind of wonder if they're based on real people.
Who knows?
Because she's very Jane-centered, like Jane Bennett. They're very similar. And then Marianne is honestly more like a Lydia character.
You called it out, and I think you called it right. It's a mix between Elizabeth and Lydia. Because she has, first of all, that main character energy. But sometimes she's very good speaking-wise. She says her thoughts, which Lizzie does in Pride and Prejudice, but she's the main character, so it's great. But in this book, she's kind of like Eleanor's more main character, and she's, anyway, they're both main characters, but she speaks her mind like Lizzie does, but she doesn't have the propriety like Lydia, and also runs a little bit too far into romance. So it feels like a good mix, but yeah, I feel so bad for both of them. And then once again, I was like, Lucy, I don't trust you. And Elinor paints her in such a understanding and best light possible, but I was just, I'm not feeling it. I don't trust you. And I was right, so meh. But Mrs. Jennings decides to invite Elinor and Marianne to London. And Elinor is like, that's not a good idea. But Marianne's like, but that's where Willoughby is, so we have to go. And so Elinor gets talked into it, because Mrs. Jennings is straight like, Marianne, we'll just go ourselves. Elinor can stay here. And Elinor was like, okay, that's a terrible idea. Let's get the lady that wants to set my sister up with literally anyone. And then my sister, who doesn't have the propriety to not run off and possibly be engaged to somebody. No. So she goes on the trip. They talk to their mom to make sure, oh, it wouldn't indispose you to not have us there. So they end up going to London. And Marianne's like, this is great. I'm going to write Willoughby, which convinces Elinor they must be engaged. Otherwise, she would never just write to him. So as we learn from the other Bennett sister, the woman can't be the first to correspond. I hate that plot so much. Mary hates that plot so much. It just gets me. Anyway, it's fine. Whatever. But Elinor goes with the stipulation that at least she's not going to see Edward there.
Guess who we see, y'all?
Immediately, I was like, so they will run into him pretty quick. Great. So it turns out, though, there was a thing with Brandon that they were supposed to go to the estate of, I don't even know how they're related, but Brandon was supposed to take him, and it was supposed to be a fun trip. And then the day of, he gets a letter, he's like, I gotta go. And they try to talk him out of it. You know, it's like, oh, you can do your business in a couple of days when we're back, or this, that, and the other thing. He's like, no, I have to go right now, and I can't tell you when I'm gonna be back. And I'm so sorry, because I am not coming. You don't have that connection, and you cannot go, and I apologize, but I have to go. And then he just leaves. And then they're in London, and he starts showing up at their place to be like, hey, I'm in town. Apparently he went to London. So he starts showing up and talking to people. And this is the point where I started shipping Brandon and Elinor. They're besties. They are best friends. He comes to just talk to her and ask her opinion on things. He really wants her opinion. He wants to talk to her about everything. He's showing up just to talk to her.
They have so much chemistry in the book.
They do.
And then in the movie, there's even more. And it's not fair.
I don't like that Marianne... Okay, spoilers. I don't like that Marianne ends up with Brandon. She is so mean to him in the first part of the book, because she and Willoughby just like... and are just mean to Brandon Brandon for no reason. And she's like, well, he had an attachment once, and so he can never love again, so I won't be in love with him. And so why? Why is Brandon in love with her? What about her sparks love?
She reminds him of his first girl.
And that's creepy.
Yeah. Tragedy befalls this girl because he doesn't marry her. They don't hook up or anything, but
it's a whole scandal. Okay, so his thing, he was in love with this girl and they were going to run away and get married. Okay, no, actually, I have to go farther back. His dad adopts this girl out of obligation. And so she grows up with Brandon and his brother. But the brother is older. And so even though the dad wants her to marry into the family and Brandon and her were about to elope, he's like, no, you have to marry the older brother, except the older brother is trash and he's abusive and he's terrible to her. And she divorces him. And Brandon's in the military and he's in India at the time period. And he comes back and finds out that she's in a poorhouse and she ran away with this one guy that swindled her and got her pregnant, and she ends up dying soon after. And we have a little bit of a Les Mis situation where he adopts her daughter and takes care of her. So he ends up sending her to this boarding house, but that doesn't sound right. It's a nice one.
Boarding school type thing.
Yeah, this woman houses her and 6 other girls. It's very respectable, supposedly. We'll get there. So the only thing Marianne has going for her is that she looks like Eliza.
And acts like her, too.
And acts a little bit like her. But you're 35, man. I feel like you should really grow out of the teenage wonderment. But that's all she's got going for her. Elinor and Brandon just had so much chemistry. And when Marianne was being super rude to him, every time she would step up and be like, no, he's a good guy. He's a good guy. I think he's a good guy. You're being unfair. He's a good guy. And it was just, we're gonna end up together.
We all did.
Where is that fanfic? I know it's out there.
Oh, I'm sure there's a bunch.
But I want the romance game, and I want to pick Brandon for Elinor. Gosh dang it. In the end, it's so sad, too. They basically get engaged, and she's like, oh, I learned to love him. And I'm just, it's like she wrote Pride and Prejudice, and she's like, wait a second. No, I don't want any of my girls to settle, except for Lydia. She can settle. I hate her.
But Lydia was happy, though. She was happy with her choice.
For a couple months, yeah. And then they both become embittered, terrible people. But you know what? And I feel a little bit bad about Pride and Prejudice with Lydia. She's insufferable, but she's also a teenager. Anyway, Pride and Prejudice aside, I feel obligated to point out that Mrs. Jennings has a second daughter named Charlotte. She's Charlotte Palmer, married to a politician, and he's the worst thing ever. He just straight up ignores her. That was so sad. I hated any scene that she was in with him because he would just be straight up rude to her, and she'd be just, the Delulu scale is so high, and she's in her early 20s, and it's just, she's gonna have a lifetime with this man. And I just felt so sad because he just straight up ignores her, and she's like, oh my gosh, you're so silly, ha ha ha, isn't he so funny? He's so droll. He says the worst things possible straight up, and she's like, oh my gosh, he's just so droll, how funny.
You gotta laugh.
Mrs. Jennings, your setting up sucks because Charlotte and him are just sad, and I feel bad for her. And then I kind of feel bad for the Middletons because Lady Middleton, she doesn't get a first name ever, which is interesting, but Lady Middleton is just so not right for her husband. Yeah, he's rich, so it works out in that way, but his personality and her personality are so different to the point where they're constantly inviting other people over because they don't want to just have dinner themselves. Yes, a little bit because John is 100% extrovert, but also I don't think they want to be alone together very much, even though they have 5 kids. But Mrs. Jennings, your track record, not a fan. I'm probably just never going to bring up Charlotte ever again. I just wanted to bring her up there to be like, that is sad. Anyway, she doesn't really affect the plot. She's in it a bunch, but she doesn't really affect it. Willoughby's just straight up ignoring Marianne, and then they see him at a ball and he's there with another woman. I'm just saying, if she wrote these books nowadays, it would be a drama. This is not a romance. He is with another woman, walking up with her, barely looks at Marianne, only talks kind of to Elinor, and then Marianne's like, what the heck, man? He's just like, sorry if you misunderstood my intentions. Turns away, walks off. Bruh. This is around the point that I remembered the line of, oh, that Wickham must be somewhat like our Willoughby. And I was like, That's right. You're a jerk.
He sucks.
He sucks. So she goes home and writes him a letter. And this is like the third letter she's written him. And he writes a letter back. And is just so rude. So, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry if you misunderstood my intentions. I didn't feel any sort of way for you. Anyway, here's the 3 letters you've written me, and here's the lock of hair I literally begged you for. We spend literally every day together, but I still begged you for a lock of hair, which is basically like a promise ring. You get it from your sweetheart. I'm sure there's a Taylor Swift lyric. Oh yeah, doesn't she talk about having his initials on a necklace that she wears?
Chain around her neck, or also paper rings.
Also there. So very romantic. It's a big deal. So yeah, gives it all back. And so she is just catatonic. Doesn't want to live life. And Elinor kind of calls her out on it because she's like, a normal person would be upset, but put it aside a little bit to talk to other people and, go on with your life, which that's how Elinor does it. And I'm not 100% like an Eleanor's just keep it all bottled up so other people don't feel uncomfortable, but it's very British of her. So I'm not surprised. But she points out how Marianne and her mother go out of their way to feed their big emotions. And so she's not crying to grieve. She's crying to be upset. And she'll do things to purposely keep her upset, which some people do when they break up. And that is also not healthy. So neither of them are doing great. Somewhere in the middle. But yeah, she's just gone. She's done. And this is the point where Brandon shows up and is like, hey, I'm really glad your sister didn't hang around longer with him. Because guess what he did? He got Brandon's adopted daughter pregnant and ran. Like, he's worse than Willoughby. We can agree on that, right?
Oh, 100%.
And it's so weird the way the book treats him, because later on he shows up and 2 times, I think, and he tells his side of the story and he explains, actually, I'm very pitiable. So it was just so weird that the book was like, no, he should get a redemption arc almost. It doesn't, but it lessens it, even though it shouldn't, because he's just straight up like, yeah, I totally did just ditch her. And I was going to do the exact same thing to your sister. And then I didn't, because I actually caught feelings. But that didn't stop me from going for a rich girl the second I could.
Yeah, and Marianne doesn't super blame him. Elinor does, for sure.
They're terrible. The fact that he feels bad that he is dealing with real world consequences does not make it better. Maybe this went on to inform Wickham, and it's just like, no, Wickham's a villain. He's the worst. He's just straight up terrible. No redemption arc. He is the worst. We're all gonna hate him from here on out. Because Willoughby even makes up with their half brother and hangs out with them. He got a woman pregnant and ran from her. Child support does not exist. He ruined her and was going to do the exact same thing to Marianne. And then he's like, oh, no, I didn't write that unfeeling letter. My jealous fiance made me write it. And I felt so bad the entire time I was sending it. Bull. You acted how you acted at the ball. Don't even. I can't with his redemption arc. I want to throw him to the wolves like we did with Wickham. And that is the one thing where I'm like, if I reread this book, I might just skip the chapter where he's like, oh, woe is me. I got this girl pregnant and then my aunt disinherited me. So I had to go marry a rich woman because I was poor instead of the woman I loved. Except when I got married, my aunt reinstated me. So if I had just married for love, I could have had love and money.
Mm-hmm.
And Elinor calls him out later, and Marianne agrees. He would have been fine as long as there was money, but he's a spender. That's why he's in debt. He only spends money. There's no amount of money that would have been enough money for him. And you would have tried, Marianne. You would have made as many economies as you could, but he would have spent you into debt, and then he would have seen you as the one holding him back and not himself. They call it out, and it's so but they still are like, I feel bad for him. No!
I feel nothing for him.
I feel nothing for him except bad for his fiance. Oh no, she's a very jealous woman. She should be. Trash. Anyway, Edward comes to town, and yes, he is engaged to Lucy. And Lucy's sister, who's the worst. Somehow I hate her more than Lucy. And I don't know if her name is Anne or Nancy, because people call her Anne, and her sister calls her Nancy. And I don't know if that's some sort of cultural nickname or if she just, I don't know. So I just put both. But her older sister, who's 30, by the way, acts like a 17-year-old gossip, informs Edward's family because things are going so well in the meeting, because they just hate Elinor so much that they're nice to Lucy despite her, to be like, we could be nice to you, but we're just not gonna, because we think he likes you and you're not up to tier. So Lucy's sister takes this as they approve of her and reveals that they are engaged.
It's so funny.
Immediately 360, because Lucy is an even lower social class than Elinor is. And it's to the point where the mom's like, oh my gosh, I wish you were engaged to Elinor. I wish. But he stands by it. Edward's just like, yeah, I am engaged to her. I will not break the engagement for money. So I'm going to just accept being disinherited. And it's sad because you come to find out he hasn't been in love with Lucy in a long time, because she kind of wore out her welcome, in that it's just two people growing apart in a lot of ways. Having conversations with her is tedious. And I feel bad for Lucy because it's caught up so she didn't have an education, but he is willing to get disinherited. He's going to immediately take up the cloth, and he's going to take a employment from Brandon, and it's not quite enough to get married on, but still going to marry her. And it's just, that's a good man. The principles of that man is really good. And so he goes from 2,000 a year, which we learned 500 is like 50,000. So what is it? 200,000 pounds a year to barely 200, like 250, I think. So like 25,000 a year. Like that's below poverty level. It's a dragged out thing too. And Eleanor's really upset about it. And it's just, she gets to talk to Brandon. And for some reason, Brandon doesn't want to be the one to extend the job offer. And so he makes Elinor do it. And so Elinor is like, cool, I'm helping the man I love marry another woman. That's awesome. I love that for me. But she does it. So they're heading back. Both sisters are very sad. Marianne feels bad that she was acting so upset when Elinor was also holding pain. And so it kind of ages Marianne a little bit to be like, oh my gosh, other people are going through things too. I can't just constantly be in my own emotions and have no empathy for other people. So that does age her a little bit. And she's like, yeah, I did act a little over the top with him. You know, now that I see things from this side, that could have been really bad. Thankfully, it wasn't. She really grows up in a way that I don't think any of these characters do in Pride and Prejudice, which, by the way, there's a line in here that I wrote down, and it's, Elinor was to be comforter to others in her own distress, no less than in their. I was like, oh, that hit my heart. You're really going through something, but you feel like you have to be there for, friendship, but to the point where it's like you're really suffering with something, but you don't feel like you can tell other people because you don't want to burden them because they're also going through something really big.
Elinor is the best. I know we already said it, but
she's the older sister everyone needs. She's so good. They decide, okay, we're going to go back home. We're going to go back home. There's nothing here for us. Willoughby is not here for you. Edward's not here for me. What are we doing here? We're not going to meet people. Let's just go home. So they head out and they go to Cleveland. And Marianne just decides she's going to be alone as much as possible. And even in the rain, she's going to walk around in it. So she ends up getting sick. Once again, I really feel like she wrote this book and she's like, do it better. And then wrote Pride and Prejudice, which also has a scene of a sister getting sick.
I know, but Marianne does it so much less gracefully than Jane did.
She also almost dies, straight up. So Brandon is there for her. Mrs. Jennings is there for her. But the Palmers are there, except tiny baby, and it might be infection, so they leave. Which is really gracious of them to leave their own home and go and live with someone else, so that she can't be moved. Granted, she should not be moved. Very, very close to death and bad. So Elinor is just constantly watching out for her. There's this apothecary that keeps coming. Oh, this will work. And then it doesn't. Or she gets worse. Or she gets better for a little while. And then she goes right back to being really bad. And so they send Brandon out to go get her mom, because they're like, she might be dying. This might be mom's last chance to see her. So goes off in the night in a carriage in the pouring rain to go get the mother. And then it does look good for Marianne that she's able to stabilize herself. I didn't think she was going to get murdered, but I mean, I don't know.
How dark would this have been if it's like, okay, now one of the main characters is just dead?
Yeah. I didn't think she was gonna kill her. Well, she might have.
She could have.
She could have. Back in the day, they were not holding your hands about it. So she could have. She does not. But the carriage shows up. It's a little early, but she's like, good, I can give my mom the good news, because I'm sure she's been in distress this entire time. But then it's Willoughby. Wait, let me explain myself to you. I'm still a horrible person, but I loved your sister, so you should feel bad for me. Because I'm over here like, good, suffer more.
Dude chose this.
These are all his actions. All of them. I just think it's so interesting to compare him to Wickham, who stays the villain for less than this dude. I was so upset because at this point I am super shipping Elinor and Brandon. I'm like, they're going to get together. Edward's out of the way. You know, that was very tragic, whatever. But then it's kind of phrased like, oh, he didn't actually say that. It was just the mom's perception. And I was like, please, 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 please. Please let it be a sisterly love. They get Marianne home. She talks to Elinor and she's like, you know, I've gotten over everything with Willoughby. I just wish I knew his heart in this and I would be able to really move on from it. And so Elinor finally decides, okay, I'm going to tell you Willoughby's side of things. And that's when they just agree, yeah, the marriage would have been doomed. Lucy shows up to be like, hey, I'm Lucy Ferris now. This woman's audacity! She is just straight up like, I am Lucy Ferris now. And, oh yes, Mr. Ferris is in the carriage. Oh, he can't come out to talk to you. We have to go away now. We're going to this house to see my father because we're so happy together. And then she gets in the carriage and leaves. And Elinor is just distraught. Except Edward shows up and plot twist, Lucy married Richard, his little brother.
The drama.
They have been engaged for 4 freaking years. And in 2 weeks' time, she marries the brother? The brother just saw his older brother get disinherited for being engaged to this woman, and they get married? The audacity. And then for Lucy to purposely phrase it as if she was married to Edward to cause Elinor distress. The villainry. I was not happy with her. I thought she was sus, but I was like, I need an explanation for this. What happened?
Yeah, this is the only moment where I felt any suspicion from her. She mostly just seemed really naive and to not have any friends. That's how I took her. But to be fair, it did bring a much bigger jaw drop probably for me than for you. You're like, yeah, this girl sucks.
Well, I was like, wow, you're being really rude. But I did not have her as calculating. I didn't have her as conniving and plotting. I was with you. I was like, she's a naive girl who is just being a mean girl about this. I took her as a mean girl. A little bit, oh, I'm going to be super nice to you, so you'll let me live in your really fancy house and you'll feed me. I had that. But there are plenty of people out there that are kind of, you know, to be nice to them and you get good things. I didn't have her as a grifter. Edward shows up and he explains that apparently Richard and Lucy had been running around behind his back for months. She's got Richard in her back pocket. I really don't understand why Lucy ended up with Richard. Richard doesn't have a job. At least Edward was going into the church and was going to have some income. He doesn't have a job. He's about to be disinherited himself. The only reason he likes her is because she compliments him. You meet him a couple of times. He's horrible.
I don't understand how disinheriting works, but I definitely thought that he was now the top dog.
Oh, you're right. She just straight up willed it to him and gave it to him. That's right. Excuse me. We need to stop here real quick. For me to be the worst to Elinor, who has never done anything to her. Yeah, Edward clearly was in love with her. They had a thing. But immediately Elinor is like, your friend. She keeps your confidence. She stays away from Edward. She doesn't do anything to court his opinion. She gets him a job so you guys can get married. And you're going to go around and act like you're married to Edward just to cause her pain. Ma'am. But anyway, Edward shows up and immediately proposes to Elinor.
Which I love, because the second he's freed from this girl and does his brother obligations, whatever, for wedding stuff, he's like, okay, I gotta go find my girl.
But come to find out, Lucy just left her sister in London, took all of their money, and just left her stranded in London. Dang, no money, no place to stay, no way to get out of there, nothing. So, awkward moment of Edward's not disowned anymore because the mom's like, well, I can't just disown both of my boys. She gives consent for Edward to marry Elinor and even gives him a little money to live on. And so they are married and they live at Brandon's parsonage. And then it works out because Marianne and Brandon get together. I wasn't for it. Least favorite couple. But yeah, that's it. So everyone's married now, as you do with Jane Austen novels. So, and the mom spends half her time in the Brandon mansion and then half the time in her little cottage. And we don't learn anything about Margaret. You know, the author of The Other Bennet Sister? Sequel. The Other Dashwood Sister. Margaret deserves her due. General thoughts. Keeping the names straight was hard. Thankfully, most of the men are called by their last names, and so it only comes up every so often. Although with John Middleton, he was very consistently called John Middleton. He gets his full name. I'm a little fascinated by who gets a Christian name and who's just last name, because Willoughby's Willoughby for the whole time. And it's Mrs. Jennings. She doesn't even get a first name. And Lady Middleton doesn't get a first name. But Charlotte is pretty consistently mentioned as Charlotte, also Mrs. Palmer, but as Charlotte. Regency England, when do you get a first name?
Well, for the daughters that aren't married, like the first one is Miss Bennet, and then the second one is Miss Elizabeth Bennet. They add a distinction for the second one.
And then once Jane gets married, Elizabeth is Miss Bennet.
Yes.
That had to get confusing, but I liked it. This really does feel like Beta Pride and Prejudice.
Like, they definitely are companion stories together. I mean, they're not anywhere close to each other, obviously, but same vibes.
I get why people put them together. And there are things in Sense and Sensibility that I like better than Pride and Prejudice, but on a whole.
Well, and you gave this one 5 stars, which, I mean, it's great, but
I loved it.
It was a 4-star for me. And I think if I didn't love Pride and Prejudice, I might like this more. It's so hard because they're very similar, and if the other one did it better.
One question for the author. So that's hard with someone like Jane Austen. The only question I have for her is, what's something you've never been asked, but you've wanted to talk about? And I don't care if it's books or her writing or her life or politics or literally anything. Maybe she had a favorite flavored tea and no one asked her about that. Whatever it is, I would just be curious what has not been asked.
Mine would probably be, how many of these characters are actually based on the messy people in your life?
Who do you know? Who's in your circle? Who's not in your circle?
There's always a busybody in every single one, whether it be some random aunt or slightly related somebody or the mom.
I mean, nowadays, I feel like that's the thing.
Oh, no, but she knows somebody that's exactly like this person.
She definitely has archetypes that she likes to stick to.
Well, she usually has 2 sisters or 2 cousins or 2 somethings where it's like, okay, here's a couple of girls and the dynamics between them. And she does have siblings in real life. How many of this is playing up to people you know?
Rating. I just give it a they did what out of 10. There were so many times where I just audibly gasped at this book. And it started slow for me. I had a hard time getting into it. And once we got going, I was sold. I was into it. I wanted to know what was going to happen. I had no idea what was going on. And so a little part of me does wish I could have had that experience with Pride and Prejudice. And how much would I have been surprised? I never knew where the plot was going. I literally was like, are we killing Marianne? Is Marianne dying? I don't know what's about to happen.
I mean, mine was pretty similar. The jaw is on the floor out of 10, basically the same. This was very twist and turnsy. And I did Pride and Prejudice so long ago, the first time, and then the movie and the BBC and then everything. I don't remember being as caught off guard as this whole book, everything that happens. And even with some of her other books, it's like, okay, yeah, well, you know what's going to happen, especially once you do more of them and pick up tropes and stuff. This one did still catch me off guard.
Because this was the first one you read when you were like, I need to do all of them, right? Or the second?
I think it was the first one. But I did Sanditon, I did Mansfield Park, I did all of the weird little ones, and 2 of them are unfinished, which I did not know going into because I do not do any research, which was fun for me. Emma sucked. I did like Mansfield Park. That one's a good one. But that's one that has a lot of adaptations, or they talk about it, or it's very
celebrated.
Yeah. Which, I mean, to be fair, she only has like 10 things she's done, or however many.
Read again, yeah.
I'd read this one again.
Yeah, I'd read it. I own it. I'll read it again.
I'm sure we could find a good fake sequel for it, like the other Bennett sister. I'm sure there's something out there.
But, have you read this one? What's your favorite Jane Austen novel? Or short story, because she has those two. Do you have any book recommendations for us? Tell us all about it in the comments below. If you like the video, hit like. And if you're enjoying yourself, hit subscribe for more. Thank you for exploring Sense and Sensibility with us. Join us next time when we'll be covering Suddenly Super by Jen Colanita. I'm Sam Reiner.
And I'm Danielle.
And we hope to see you and a friend here next time. Escape From Me Book Club is a Lunar Skull production. Check us out on TikTok or Instagram to keep up to date with us. Lunar_SKULK.